Are you eating foods you believe are completely normal, even healthy, but unknowingly creating an environment inside your body where cancer cells can actually thrive? That's not a dramatic statement, it's a metabolic reality. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every single day, your body is making decisions at the cellular level, decisions about whether to burn fat or store it, whether to reduce inflammation or increase it, and importantly, whether to suppress abnormal cells or allow them to grow. And one of the biggest drivers of those decisions is not genetics. It's what you eat specifically, how certain foods influence your metabolism. Now here's the surprising part. There is one extremely common food consumed daily by millions of people that has been shown to create the exact biological conditions that cancer cells prefer. Not because it causes cancer directly in a simple way, but because it fuels the internal environment that cancer cells depend on to grow. And most people have no idea it's happening. Let me explain why this matters so much. Cancer cells are fundamentally different from healthy cells in one key way: how they produce energy. Healthy cells are metabolically flexible. They can burn fat, glucose, even ketones, depending on what's available. But cancer cells? They are heavily dependent on glucose sugar and a process called glycolysis, even when oxygen is present. This is known in science as the Warburg effect. So when your blood sugar is constantly elevated, when insulin levels are chronically high, when inflammation is quietly simmering in the background, you are essentially creating a perfect fuel system for abnormal cell growth. And the problem is modern diets are designed to keep you in that exact state. Now here's where this gets even more important. This isn't just about cancer. This same metabolic dysfunction is also driving weight gain, fatigue, brain fog, hormonal imbalance, accelerated aging. So when we talk about removing this one common food, we're not just talking about reducing cancer risk. We're talking about transforming your entire metabolic health. In this video, I'm going to break this down in a very simple, practical way, like we're standing at a whiteboard together. You'll understand what this food is really doing inside your body, why it disrupts your metabolism at the cellular level, how it feeds inflammation and abnormal cell growth, and most importantly, what to do instead. Because the goal here is not fear, it's clarity. And once you understand how your body actually works, you can make decisions that protect it. If you're serious about optimizing your health naturally, not just managing symptoms, you're in the right place. And if this kind of deep, science-based breakdown is helpful, consider subscribing. I post content like this every day to help you take control of your metabolism and long-term health. Let's start with the foundation, because once you understand this, everything else becomes obvious. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Cancer cells are metabolically different, not slightly different. Fundamentally different. And the biggest difference is how they produce energy. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine two types of engines. A hybrid engine, efficient, flexible, can switch between fuel sources. A broken gasoline-only engine, inefficient, constantly demanding fuel. Healthy cells are like hybrid engines. They can burn glucose, sugar, fatty acids, ketones. They adapt based on what's available. But cancer cells? They behave like that broken engine. They rely heavily, almost exclusively, on glucose. This phenomenon is known as the Warburg effect. Even when oxygen is available, which should allow efficient energy production, cancer cells choose a much less efficient pathway called glycolysis. Now that sounds like a disadvantage, but here's the catch. This inefficient process allows them to grow faster. Because instead of focusing on efficiency, cancer cells prioritize rapid division. And glucose is the fastest fuel for that process. So what does this mean for you? It means every time your blood sugar spikes, you are increasing the availability of the exact fuel these cells prefer. Now let's take this one layer deeper. When you consume refined carbohydrates or sugar, your blood glucose rises quickly. In response, your body releases insulin to bring it down. But if this happens repeatedly, multiple times a day, you create a constant cycle. High glucose, high insulin, more glucose uptake, repeat. Over time, this does two things. It feeds glucose into cells continuously. It creates an environment of growth signaling, and cancer cells take advantage of both. What the research shows is that cancer cells often overexpress glucose transporters, especially GLUT1. Think of these as sugar doors on the cell surface. Cancer cells install more of these doors than normal cells. So when sugar is present in the bloodstream, they absorb it faster and more aggressively. It's like they're competing and winning. Now here's the part most people miss. This isn't just about eating a lot of sugar. It's about how often your body is exposed to it. If you're drinking sugary beverages, snacking every few hours, eating refined carbs at every meal, you're never giving your body a break. You're constantly supplying fuel. And here's the consequence. Your body never shifts into fat-burning mode. It never activates repair mechanisms. It stays locked in a glucose-dependent state. The exact environment cancer cells prefer. Now let's bring this back to something practical. What can you actually do about this? Start with these simple shifts. 1. Reduce rapid sugar exposure. Eliminate sugary drinks. They spike glucose the fastest. Replace with water, green tea, or black coffee. 2. Stabilize your meals. Combine protein plus healthy fats plus fiber. This slows glucose absorption and prevents spikes. 3. Create gaps between meals. Avoid constant snacking. Allow 3 to 5 hours between meals to lower insulin. 4. Experiment with a 12-14 hour overnight fast. This helps shift your body toward fat metabolism. It reduces glucose availability. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I post content like this every day to help you understand your body at a deeper level and take control of your health. Now remember this key idea. Cancer cells don't just appear randomly. They thrive in a specific metabolic environment. And one of the biggest drivers of that environment is how often and how much you elevate your blood sugar. Now that you understand how cancer cells depend on glucose, we need to talk about the hormone that controls where that glucose goes and what it signals your body to do. That hormone is insulin. And most people think of insulin as just a blood sugar regulator. But that's only part of the story. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Insulin is one of the most powerful growth-promoting hormones you have. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of insulin as both a key that unlocks your cells to let glucose in and a fertilizer signal that tells cells grow, multiply, store energy. Now, in a healthy system, insulin rises after you eat and then falls. It's temporary, controlled. But in today's environment, insulin is elevated almost all day long because of frequent meals, constant snacking, high intake of refined carbohydrates. So instead of a gentle wave, you get a constant flood. Now here's where this becomes critical. When insulin stays elevated chronically, it activates pathways like the IGF-1 signaling pathway. IGF-1 stands for insulin-like growth factor 1. And as the name suggests, it amplifies growth signals in the body. This is useful when you're healing tissue, building muscle, recovering from injury. But when this pathway is constantly activated, it doesn't just stimulate healthy cells. It can also stimulate abnormal or damaged cells. Let's break this down further. High insulin levels do 3 important things. 1. Increase cell proliferation signals. Cells receive stronger grow and divide messages. 2. Inhibit apoptosis. This is your body's natural process of removing damaged cells. So instead of eliminating abnormal cells, they're allowed to survive. 3. Enhance nutrient delivery to cells, including glucose, which we just discussed cancer cells rely on. So now you have a combination of more fuel, glucose, stronger growth signals, insulin plus IGF-1, reduced cleanup, less apoptosis. That's a powerful environment. And unfortunately, it's a very common one. What the research shows is that chronically elevated insulin levels are associated with increased risk of several cancers, including breast, colon, and pancreatic cancer. Not because insulin causes cancer directly, but because it creates conditions where abnormal cells can thrive. Now let's make this practical, because this is where you have control. If insulin is the signal, then your daily habits determine how loud that signal becomes. Here's how to regulate it effectively. 1. Reduce refined carbohydrates. White bread, pastries, sugary cereals. These spike insulin rapidly and repeatedly. Replace with whole foods, vegetables, slow digesting carbohydrates. 2. Prioritize protein in every meal. Protein has a stabilizing effect on blood sugar. It reduces the need for large insulin spikes. 3. Increase healthy fats. Olive oil, avocados, nuts, and seeds. These do not spike insulin significantly and help keep you full. 4. Control meal frequency. This is one of the most powerful tools. If you're eating 5 to 6 times a day, insulin never drops. Instead, aim for 2-3 structured meals. Avoid unnecessary snacking. 5. Incorporate resistance training. Muscle tissue acts like a glucose sink. It improves insulin sensitivity, meaning your body needs less insulin to do the same job. Now here's the key takeaway from this section. It's not just sugar that matters, it's the hormonal response to that sugar. Because insulin doesn't just manage energy, it influences whether your body is in a state of growth or repair. And when growth signals are constantly turned on, you lose control of that balance. Now let's connect all of this to the organ that sits at the center of your metabolism, your liver. Because here's the truth most people never hear. It's not just the sugar you eat, it's what your liver is forced to do with it. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every time you consume refined sugar, your sharier especially in the form of high fructose corn syrup, it gets processed primarily in the liver. And unlike glucose, which can be used by many cells in the body, fructose is handled almost exclusively by the liver. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your liver like a processing factory. Glucose is like a delivery that can be distributed across multiple warehouses. Fructose is like a shipment that goes directly to one facility, your liver. Now imagine that facility receiving constant overload. At some point, it can't keep up. So what does it do? It starts converting excess sugar into fat. This process is called de novo lipogenesis, literally new fat creation. Now here's where the problem begins. That fat doesn't just disappear. It accumulates inside the liver, leading to a condition known as non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And this is incredibly common, even in people who don't drink alcohol. Why does this matter for cancer risk? Because a fatty, stressed liver changes your entire metabolic environment. Let's break it down. 1. The liver becomes insulin resistant. When fat builds up in the liver, it stops responding properly to insulin. So your body produces more insulin to compensate. Now you have higher insulin levels circulating all day, which, as we discussed, amplifies growth signals. 2. The liver produces more glucose internally. Even when you're not eating, a damaged liver continues releasing glucose into the bloodstream. This keeps blood sugar elevated, even during fasting. Constant fuel availability. 3. Inflammation increases significantly. A fatty liver is an inflamed liver, and inflammation doesn't stay localized. It spreads systemically, affecting blood vessels, hormones, and cellular health. 4. Detoxification pathways slow down. Your liver is responsible for processing toxins, hormones, and metabolic waste. When it's overloaded with fat, it becomes less efficient, meaning harmful compounds stay in circulation longer. Now step back and look at the full picture. More glucose, more insulin, more inflammation, less detoxification. This is not just a liver issue. This is a whole body metabolic shift. And it creates an internal environment where abnormal cells can survive more easily. What the research shows is that metabolic diseases like fatty liver and insulin resistance are strongly associated with increased cancer risk. Again, not as a single cause, but as part of a larger metabolic ecosystem. Now let's make this practical, because the good news is the liver is one of the most responsive organs in your body. You can start improving its function relatively quickly with the right inputs. 1. Eliminate liquid sugars first. Sodas, fruit juices, sweetened drinks. These deliver fructose rapidly and overload the liver. Replace with water, sparkling water, unsweetened tea. 2. Increase cruciferous vegetables. Broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. These support liver detox pathways. 3. Add bitter foods. Arugula, dandelion greens, lemon water. These stimulate bile flow, helping fat metabolism. 4. Use time-restricted eating. A 12-16-hour overnight fast gives your liver time to burn stored fat, reduce inflammation, reset metabolic function. 5. Support with key nutrients. Choline, found in eggs. Omega-3 fatty acids. Magnesium. These help reduce liver fat and improve insulin sensitivity. If this is helping you connect the dots, consider subscribing. Yamisari Orter Words. I share content like this every day to help you take control of your metabolic health with clarity and confidence. Now remember this key point. It's not just about avoiding sugar. It's about protecting the organ that processes it. Because once the liver becomes overwhelmed, everything else we've talked about, insulin, glucose, inflammation, starts to spiral. Now we need to talk about something that quietly connects everything we've discussed so far. The glucose, insulin, liver dysfunction. They all converge into one powerful driver, chronic inflammation, and this is where the conversation shifts. Because cancer is not just about abnormal cells. It's about the environment those cells live in. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Inflammation is a natural defense mechanism. It's how your body responds to injury, infection, or stress. Short-term inflammation is protective, but when it becomes chronic, low-grade, persistent, always on, disassess, yisas, it starts to damage the very system it's meant to protect. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of inflammation like a fire. A small, controlled fire can cook food and provide warmth, but a fire that never turns off begins to burn the entire house. That's what chronic inflammation does inside your body. It creates a constant state of stress at the cellular level. Now here's where sugar comes back into the picture. When you consume refined sugar frequently, you trigger repeated spikes in blood glucose, and high glucose levels lead to the formation of compounds called advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. These compounds damage proteins, DNA, and cell membranes. And in response, your body activates inflammatory pathways, especially the NF-κB pathway. This pathway acts like a master switch. When it's turned on chronically, it promotes production of inflammatory cytokines, increased oxidative stress, activation of genes involved in cell survival and proliferation. Now think about that for a moment. You're not just feeding cells, you're changing the signals they receive. And cancer cells take advantage of this environment because inflammation does three key things that support their survival. 1, it damages healthy tissue, creating more opportunities for abnormal cells to emerge. 2, it promotes angiogenesis. This is the formation of new blood vessels, something tumors need to grow. 3, it suppresses immune surveillance. Your immune system is responsible for identifying and eliminating abnormal cells. But chronic inflammation weakens that function. So now you have more cellular damage, more growth signals, less immune protection. That's a dangerous combination. What the research shows is that chronic inflammation is a common denominator in many diseases, including cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and neurodegeneration. It's not a coincidence. It's a shared root cause. Now let's bring this back to something you can control, because reducing inflammation is one of the most powerful strategies you have. 1, stabilize blood sugar. Everything we discussed earlier applies here. Less glucose variability, less inflammatory signaling. 2, remove processed foods, especially those high in refined sugar, industrial seed oils, artificial additives. These amplify inflammation. 3, increase anti-inflammatory foods. Focus on leafy greens, berries, turmeric, fatty fish. These contain compounds that actively reduce inflammatory pathways. 4, prioritize sleep. Poor sleep increases cortisol and inflammatory markers. Aim for 7-8 hours of consistent, high-quality sleep. 5, manage stress. Chronic psychological stress directly increases inflammation. Simple tools: walking, deep breathing, time in sunlight. Now here's the key takeaway from this section. Cancer doesn't grow in isolation. It grows in an environment, and chronic inflammation helps create that environment. So when you reduce sugar, you're not just lowering calories. You're turning down a biological signal that affects your cells, your immune system, your long-term health trajectory. Now, we're going to shift from what goes wrong to what your body is actually designed to do when it's working properly. Because your body is not fragile. It's highly adaptive. And one of its most powerful protective features is something called metabolic flexibility. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Metabolic flexibility is your ability to switch between fuel sources, burning glucose when it's available, burning fat when it's not. This switching is not optional. It's essential for survival, energy stability, and long-term health. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your body like a hybrid vehicle. It can run on electricity, fat ketones, or gasoline, glucose. A healthy system switches seamlessly depending on demand. But if you constantly feed it gasoline, the electric system never activates. Eventually, it becomes inefficient, even dysfunctional. That's exactly what happens with modern eating patterns. Frequent meals, constant snacking, high sugar intake. Your body becomes locked into glucose-burning mode. And over time, it loses the ability to efficiently burn fat. Now, here's why this matters for cancer biology. Remember what we discussed earlier. Cancer cells are highly dependent on glucose. They struggle to use fat or ketones effectively. So when your body is metabolically flexible, you create an environment where healthy cells adapt and thrive. Cancer cells face an energy disadvantage. But when you lose that flexibility, you're constantly supplying glucose. And you're removing one of your body's natural protective mechanisms. There's another layer to this. When you shift into fat-burning mode, especially during fasting or low insulin states, your body activates repair processes. One of the most important is autophagy. Autophagy is your body's way of removing damaged cells, recycling dysfunctional components, maintaining cellular health. Think of it as your internal cleanup system. But here's the problem. Autophagy only activates when insulin is low. If you're constantly eating, constantly spiking insulin, this process is suppressed. So damaged cells accumulate, and over time, that increases risk. Now let's make this practical, because restoring metabolic flexibility doesn't require extreme measures. It requires consistency. 1. Create structured eating windows. Instead of eating all day, give your body defined periods of feeding and fasting. Start with 12-hour overnight fast, then gradually extend to 14-16 hours if tolerated. 2. Reduce dependency on refined carbs. You don't need to eliminate all carbohydrates, but focus on whole fiber-rich sources. Lower glycemic load. This helps stabilize energy and reduce glucose spikes. 3. Increase healthy fat intake. This trains your body to use fat as fuel. Include olive oil, nuts, seeds, avocados. 4. Incorporate movement in a fasted state. Light activity like walking before your first meal encourages fat burning. 5. Avoid late-night eating. Eating late keeps insulin elevated overnight. This blocks fat burning and repair processes. If this is helping you understand how to work with your biology, say or Kate or cow, and not against it, consider subscribing. I share content like this every day to help you build a body that's resilient, not reactive. Now here's the key idea to carry forward. Your body is not designed to run on constant fuel. It's designed to cycle between feeding and fasting, growth and repair. And when you restore that cycle, you don't just improve energy or weight. You change the internal environment in a way that supports long-term health and resilience. In the next section, we're going to bring everything together with one final and often overlooked factor. Not just what you eat, but how often you eat it, because frequency may be the hidden driver behind everything we've discussed. Next, Section 8, frequency, the silent driver of metabolic damage. Now let's bring this full circle, because there's one factor quietly influencing everything we've discussed, and most people completely overlook it. It's not just what you eat, it's how often you eat. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every time you eat, even a small snack, your body shifts into a metabolic state. Insulin rises, blood sugar increases, energy is stored, repair processes are paused. Now that's normal if it happens occasionally, but in modern eating patterns, this happens all day long. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your body has two modes. Fed mode, storing energy, building tissue. Repair mode, burning fat, cleaning up damage. Now think of a light switch. Every time you eat, you flip it to fed mode. But if you're eating breakfast, mid-morning snack, lunch, afternoon snack, dinner, late night snack, that switch never flips back. You stay stuck in fed mode all day. And here's why that matters. When you're constantly in a fed state, insulin stays elevated, fat burning is suppressed, autophagy is turned off, inflammation gradually increases. So even if your meals seem healthy, the frequency alone can disrupt your metabolism. Now connect this back to cancer biology. We've already established cancer cells rely on glucose. Insulin promotes growth signaling. Inflammation creates a supportive environment. Frequent eating amplifies all three. But there's another layer most people don't consider. When you eat frequently, your digestive system is constantly active. This requires energy, so your body prioritizes digestion over repair. That means less energy is available for immune function, cellular cleanup, DNA repair. Over time, this imbalance accumulates. What the research shows is that time-restricted eating and intermittent fasting can improve. Insulin sensitivity, inflammatory markers, cellular repair processes. Again, not as a diet, but as a way to restore natural biological rhythms. Now let's make this actionable, because this is one of the simplest and most powerful changes you can make. 1. Eliminate unnecessary snacking. This is the fastest win. If you're not truly hungry, you don't need to eat. Let your body stay in a stable metabolic state. 2. Structure your meals. Aim for 2-3 meals per day. No grazing in between. This allows insulin to rise and then fall properly. 3. Create a consistent eating window. For example, eat between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. This gives you a 16-hour overnight fast. 4. Stop eating 2-3 hours before bed. This improves sleep quality, hormonal balance, overnight fat burning. 5. Pay attention to your hunger signals. Real hunger builds gradually. Cravings are often driven by blood sugar fluctuations. Learning the difference is key. Now, here's the key takeaway from this entire section. Even healthy food, eaten too often, can keep your body in a constant state of growth instead of repair. And when you never enter repair mode, you lose one of your body's most important defenses against disease. So when you reduce eating frequency, you're not restricting yourself. You're creating space for your body to do what it's designed to do. Burn fat, lower insulin, reduce inflammation, repair damaged cells. Let's bring everything together, clearly and practically. Because this entire conversation comes down to one core idea. Your body is constantly responding to the environment you create for it. And that environment is shaped every single day by your metabolic signals. Here's what we've uncovered. This common food, refined sugar, especially in forms like high fructose corn syrup, doesn't act in isolation. It triggers a cascade of physiological effects. It raises blood glucose, it spikes insulin, it overloads the liver, it increases inflammation, it suppresses cellular repair. And when these processes happen repeatedly, they create an internal environment where abnormal cells are more likely to survive. Venture say worser and potentially grow. But just as important, you've also seen the other side of the equation because your body has built-in systems designed to protect you. Metabolic flexibility, hormonal balance, cellular repair mechanisms like autophagy, immune surveillance. These systems are not broken. They're simply being overridden by modern habits. So the goal is not perfection, it's alignment. Let's recap the most important practical takeaways. 1. Stabilize your blood sugar. Reduce refined carbohydrates and eliminate liquid sugars. This alone lowers the primary fuel source that abnormal cells depend on.